Let's paint a Hell Knight. I've attached this to a 40mm base. First, we're going to take some Blood Reaver flesh and apply this all over the upper body. Next, we're going to take some Rakarth flesh and use this to highlight the skin. Then take some Vallejo light green blue and dry brush this over the top of the body, followed by your favorite white paint, which we're going to use for a final dry brushing highlight. Next, we're going to take some Mournfang brown and apply this over the goat legs, followed by some Thondia brown for the horns, hooves, and claws. Use caramel brown for the goat legs, then pick out the eyes with white, which we'll go over with the contrast paint later. For the base, we're doing the classic paint it blue, dry brush it red, paint the base rims black, and we're done. Wait. Hello folks, and welcome back to the channel. I live! I know, I'm surprised too. Yeah, so the first half of this year really got away from me, but today we're going to be talking about Trench Crusade. This was originally for the Trench Crusade painting competition, which took place in March of this year, just to give you an idea of how long this video took to edit. Now, I was originally going to use this model to practice some non-metallic metal. I don't do a lot of NMM, it's something I've been trying to work on and learn this year. I was going to do a brass scheme all over the armor with some nice verdigris and patina, a nice rusty demonic armor for this Hell Knight. Since this is Trench Crusade, and these are 3D printed STLs, I was going to import the STL file into Blender and use it to plot out the model in advance. Use Blender's lighting engine, apply a metallic texture, and basically use it to show off how you can plan out the highlights in non-metallic metal, because that's the big thing. Non-metallic metal is a lot of glazing on the technique side, it's a lot of very smooth transitions, but this part where I've always struggled is actually finding out where to place the highlights. And I was going to take this video as a chance to explore that. However, time really ran away from me in the first half of this year, and I procrastinated this so far that I painted the entire model in the wee hours of the morning of the day that it was due. So, this is not a super great competition standard. I only took like 2 or 3 hours to paint this model, but I think it is a good exercise in cutting corners, which is a joke, but not really. I think that this is a style that you could replicate on multiple Hell Knights for the rest of your warband, maybe spend a little bit more time on the parts besides the main armor than I did and be a little bit more careful with it. But this is a good way to get nice volumetric highlights without agonizing over secondary reflections and spot highlights and spending a ton of time glazing. I prefer a rougher look to my non-metallic metal just in general, and that's kind of what I was going for here, but I ran out of time before I could really go back and forth and add in the secondary highlights. I've started off with a black primer. This is Vallejo Mecha Black, and this has a nice satin finish. So I'm holding this under my desk lamp, and I am pointing out areas of light that are showing up on the reflective surface of the black. So the front of that chest, my light source is going to be coming from above his right shoulder. We're not going to be hitting the underside of the legs, the backside as much. We're not going to be having the reflections there really. We're going to be focusing on the large plates like on the shoulder. For the base, all I've done is AK's Muddy Ground Terrain Paste and some popsicle sticks, which I've chopped up with my hobby scalpel and scored to look like wood. These guys are 3D printed, so you could also 3D print your own base if you wanted to. Now the first color we're going to be using here is Bugman's Glow. This is a very nice flesh color, and because we're going to be going brass with this, which has a strong green note to it, we're going to be looking for a very light red undertone to our shadows. So what I'm going to be doing here is I've thinned this a little bit, not too much. This is still a very solid, normal paint consistency. And I'm going to be sketching in the areas of highlight, just painting over what I see the light hitting on the black primer. We are not doing smooth blends right here. We are leaving very rough patches with a lot of black showing. This is just to get the basic idea of where our highlights are going to be. Again, I'm just painting over that white. You can see on the model right now, I'm painting over the areas that are light. And we're going to do this all around the model. Make sure that you hold it in a somewhat consistent angle, especially from the front, because otherwise it's not going to make sense. But you're going to have to fudge some of the highlights a little bit. Again, I can't see both sides of this shoulder pad at the same time. When I flip him around, I'm going to see a different lighting angle, so I'm going to kind of need to invent some lighting to bridge the gap there. Again, I'm also using less than what I might expect to need on this helmet. I'm leaving a lot of black area on there still. We're going to come back and clean this up, but start slower because you want to leave some shadows in there to make the non-metallic effect pop. Of course, it's not a super proper non-metallic effect, but as you can see here, he's beautiful. We've just hit the chest plate. We've got a lot of black left on the legs, but most of his upper body is going to be hit with this. I've gone over a couple times in areas that are going to be stronger. You can tell the edges of the shoulder pad are much lighter than the middle there, and we are still leaving a lot of black in the recesses. In my first pass, I went over like the grooves in the chest. I went over those with the Bugman's Glow. I wasn't precious about that. You should preserve a little bit of shadow in the recess, but going over it with this first step is fine. It's the next step where I'm going to make a slight mistake. With our sketch done, our next color is going to be Death Guard Green. This is a great color and an awful paint. It is very poor coverage, but that's okay for what we're doing right now. I've thinned it down a little bit, not quite a glaze consistency, it's still a little bit thicker, but we're going to start fading in a bit more of that green and focusing our highlights on the upper part of the body and the parts that are being hit by the light. We want to draw the viewer's attention to the chest plate, the helmet, the shoulder pads, maybe the elbow bracer and the gauntlet. We don't want to be focusing as much on the legs with this. I apologize for the out of quality footage. This is all recorded on my phone and it is temperamental with its autofocus. I've been looking into a solution for that. As you can see, he's been thoroughly greened in the areas that matter most. We've not gone too far up in value right now, but we've added the contrasting color into here. Now our next steps are going to be focusing on the highlights, adding value to those, and refining the transitions between our shadows and our highlights. Again, we still have some black showing on the calf on that leg there. That's fine. That area is going to be in shadow. It shouldn't have very much light. Our next color is Cyberite Green, great green paint as well. We're going to add some value to those highlights, starting to get some volumes in there, as well as apply this to the edges of certain areas like the crescent and the knee pad. On the knee pad, you can also see him leaving black on the sides and only having a lighter green towards the middle. That's intentional. We don't want to have the light diffuse too much. The smaller your highlights, the shinier the metal looks. So if we have a really rough metal or a really beaten surface like the chest plate, that's going to be very diffuse highlights, some very large volumes there. Same with the shoulder pad. But I want to have a few areas of this model still be kind of shiny. So I'm leaving them a little bit darker and with some more concentrated highlights. I'm going to go back and do a similar thing on the elbow guard later. It's also around here that I've made a mistake. I have gone over the grooves on the chest plate with my paint and it's fully settled in there. It has fully been lightened up, which is a mistake on my part. I should have kept the grooves there darker. I went back in later with a wash to try and work on it, but it's better if you just never get the paint in there in the first place. And again, if you get a little too much paint in an area, get a little bit of water on your brush, dab it, diffuse the glaze. It looks very strong when it's wet, but we're not applying a very heavy filter through this model right now. We're just slowly building up that value and that color. At this point, he was looking a little too bright overall. So I took the Bugman's Glow again, as well as some Hull Red, and I've thinned these down pretty heavily, and I'm going to start shading back into the shadows. So I'm going to bring that red tone back in there. I'm going to dull down some areas that are overly bright, like the left side of the chest plate, and I'm going to start to add a little bit of a transition to the black areas. Over the black areas, I'm going to be doing a very light wash of Hull Red. This is going to tint it while not really altering the value. Again, we still want that contrast and value, but we're going to just tint the darkest areas so that they are a little more red and stand out from the green that we're working on in the highlights. So I'm going to go through the whole model. Again, very thin down paint. You can sort of see what I'm doing on the shoulder pad. Apologies for the quality again. But we're going to go through, very slowly build this up. Slowly does it. We want to use the brush like it's a colored pencil, with very thinned acrylic paint, multiple passes, very light sketching, going back in and just filtering it. And here he is after that shading. You can tell that the green pops much more now. We have a more cohesive, unified model. Dulled down a little bit in general, but that's fine because we're going to be highlighting him again. And it's about adding little subtle things, like on his right gauntlet, that little line of shadow down the middle makes the edges pop that much more. This is also when I realized that I would not have the time to complete this model to my standards. I misread the time to submit the model by. It was in Linux time for some reason, so I thought I had about 10 extra hours on Friday, and I did not. So we're moving on to Gauss Blaster Green for the final highlight that we're doing, well, penultimate technically. We're going to be applying this just on the brightest areas, so just that his upper right portion of his chest, little bits of edges on the gauntlets, the helmet, the shoulder pads. We're not even really touching the boots with this at all. This is just to divert attention to the brightest areas. So again, thinning this down pretty heavily, and we're just going to be building this up a little bit on the most important areas of the model. We're also going to pick out a few of the sharpest edges with this. Again, this is where I started to let it run into the grooves on the chest and on the knee pad, so I went back in a little bit later to fix those as well. Now the armor is done. I mixed in a little bit of white and did a very final spot highlight. I also put way too much value on the left side of his chest, which I cleaned up a little bit but was still present in the final product. All of the footage from this time is either lost or is permanently out of focus, so I apologize for that. I understand that this video is of very low quality, but right now we're working on the axe. I'm using AK's reddish gray. I love this paint. It is a nice contrast to the green armor that we've been doing, and I'm doing a very similar step to our Bugman's Glow with this. I'm just blocking in the general details. I'm leaving a little bit of black in some areas, and I'm just going to be focusing on the tip of the axe, the bottom part of the blade. I'm treating it like a power sword. If you've ever done a power sword, that's basically what non-metallic metal is. It's just you're using actual metal colors instead of blue. And you might be doing it on stuff that's not swords. But right now, I'm just doing the same thing that you would see on a Grey Knight's or Custodes power weapon. I'm just painting along the blade and around the top part of the axe. There we go. And I'm just going to be focusing on this for the rest. There we go. Now you can see the armor proper. I need to fix the left side again. I'm going to be using some Celestra Gray now with the axe. At the same time that I was doing this, I am also working on the chainmail. So as I'm working on the axe blade, I'm also going to be dry brushing reddish gray and then Celestra Gray on the chainmail. It is quick and dirty, but it was the easiest way I could think of to get this done because, again, this was filmed at 3 in the morning before a work day, so I had to get this done. So again, just going around, picking the two edges
Again, like a power weapon, you pick the two edges, leave the middle darker, and you get that nice shine effect. Skipping past some more corrupt footage, I've added a little bit of white into the Celestra Gray and just very thinly going over the brightest areas, as well as going around the edges of the axe. Weirdly enough, this turned out to be one of the better parts of the Mini, I think. It's a lot more subtle than like how I would normally do my power weapons, but I think it complements the armor well. You'll see when it dries that I went a little bit broad with the highlights again, but I think there's still some good volume in there. And of course, just dry brushing the chainmail because I was feeling very, very, very lazy. Last details. Painting the horns, axe handle, and pelt with leather brown. I lost all of my footage right after this point, so I went back with Rackrith Flesh and dry brushed that over the pelt. I also did the skull off camera with Morghast Bone and Screaming Skull. As for the base, I dry brushed the planks with Carrick Stone. I dry brushed the mud with a brown paint, I think also the leather brown. And then I went over the mud with some Agrax Earthshade gloss to make it shiny. I then painted the base rims black and the keys with the Celestra Gray from earlier. And with that, we're done.
And there we have it. I'm not super proud of this model. This is definitely not the finish I originally had planned for it when I started, but I think it's okay given the time constraints. I also wanted to practice doing a verdigris effect on this. I sort of simulated that with the much lighter green, but I don't think it turned out super well. I definitely need to spend more time doing non-metallic metal. I actually have a video idea in the works similar to this, but using some Stormcast models and comparing and contrasting some different techniques. But for right now, I really need to get back on track with my army painting, and I'm going to be pushing a few videos up through the pipeline for Orks, which I'm actually working on painting right now. Hopefully I don't take another however many month hiatus. I've been extremely busy with travel and work this year, so we're going to see if that continues. Hopefully not, probably yes. I originally envisioned this channel as a way to keep myself on track. We've seen how well that's been going, but I have been less than consistent with my painting over the past few years, and I'd like to remedy that and take this channel as an opportunity to explore some more techniques. So, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more, hopefully higher effort content coming soon.